South Sudan is the world's youngest country, and it is a country engulfed in a terrible conflict. 2.5, and I'm sorry, Paul, for using more statistics, but 2.5 million people have fled and are in refugees, many here in the Kakuma refugee camp. But our next speaker, Riya, Yuyuda, decided to return home to the capital city of Juba, to her home, despite the dangers. And she decided to return there to start a women's movement for peace. Riya, welcome to the stage.
My relationship with war started when I was just a few months old. My mother, sister, and I fled Juba to Uganda. My father refused to come with us because he was scared of the unknown. And that's how a small family that had just been started was separated. My country, South Sudan, is the world's youngest country, born out of decades of war to attain independence from Sudan. In 2011, when we attained our independence, we sang, danced, and screamed at the top of our voices throughout the all night. That is one celebration that all South Sudanese will never forget. Most of us South Sudanese have not known peace, and many are skilled in the ways of war. My country, South Sudan, has more than 64 tribes. Yet, we transition from fighting for independence to fighting each other. Why? Some for power, some to control land, and some, they just want to defend their way of life and their sense of dignity. They say it takes a village to raise a child. I say it will take every South Sudanese working together to change the story of South Sudan. From war and devastation to hope and peace. Just 2 weeks ago, I was part of a group of peace activists that traveled to Addis Ababa to support the peace process. We were not allowed in the room where the peace talks were actually taking place, but we knew that we could influence the process and influence the people. We talked to our warring parties and all the participants at every opportunity that we had. We used a drawing by a South Sudanese artist called Agüero to illustrate what South Sudan would look like if we all worked together. On this side, as you can see, this is reality back home. Women dying before their children. Children dying in the hands of their mothers. The country in chaos. Take a look at this side and imagine if we all as South Sudanese work together, what country we would have. We would have a beautiful country, a prosperous country, a country where children are even going to school. I remember we used the same drawing, and I used this drawing to talk to one of the men. And when I showed him this drawing, immediately he was like, "This picture is pushing some of us out of the country." But later he came back and said, "Wait, they say a picture says 1,000 words. And when I look at this drawing, I see a woman, I see a man and I see a soldier rolling and pushing away all the ugly side. And that could be us South Sudanese if we only work together. That drawing was a conversation starter. I realized that that man and I share the same dream, a dream for a peaceful South Sudan. Despite that dream, we all came away very disappointed. Why? Because once again, those peace talks did not bring the peace that we were all yearning for. There have been so many peace agreements signed in the past, and they've all fallen apart. Since December 2013, 2.5 million people have fled the country. 63% of those are children, and many sought refuge here in Kakuma where we are today. Inside my country, war impacts every part of our lives. Over 2 million people are internally displaced. The most affected are women and children. War is a cycle. But I believe just like any other cycle, it can be broken through hard work and commitment. When war happens in a country, many things take place. It destroys and separates families, just like it did to mine. It destroys communities. It also devastates the country's infrastructure. Hospitals are almost non-existent. Schools are destroyed. And even though it rains almost half the year, clean water is a luxury for us, and food is scarce. What happens to the country's economy? It is completely destroyed. But despite all those horrible effects of war, people still choose to hope. And some choose to go back home. They return because they want to rebuild what has been broken. They return because they want to bring hope back to their country. They return because no matter how bad things are, they just want to go home. The first time I returned home was in 2004. We had stayed away in Uganda for more than 13 years. I remember we traveled by road for 2 weeks, a journey that now only takes about 12 to 14 hours. That was the longest journey of my life. We only traveled when it was safe. There were so many checkpoints. Sometimes they would stop us, and other times they would let us through. That was a journey that took me home. When I arrived, I was struck by the devastation. I saw an empty land. I saw a country that did not have proper infrastructure. It was very dusty and very hot. It just looked ugly to me. But despite that ugliness, I felt at home. I remember my uncle and his family had so little, but they slaughtered chicken to welcome us home. He also gave me a crate of troll sodas, commonly known as Team Back Home, to celebrate my birthday. You can imagine what luxury that was. I felt so good and I felt at home. But I had to go back to Uganda to finish my school. And again, in 2013, war erupted. I was finishing my final exams in the university. And after my exams, I just wanted to go home. And since then, I've been working to rebuild my country. I met these amazing South Sudanese women. We had all struggled through life, but we had a passion for peace and equality. And together, we formed a women's organization called Crown the Woman South Sudan to fight for women's rights and empower young girls wherever they are, in their schools, in the displacement camps. We mentor these girls and teach them to believe in themselves. If you ask a young South Sudanese schoolgirl who her role model is, she may tell you Michelle Obama or Lupita Nyong'o, which is not a bad thing at all because I personally love those women. But we just want to show them that they are great South Sudanese women doing amazing work right there in their communities. And they too can. We also work with women. And our message is this: irrespective of our tribe, irrespective of our political affiliations, irrespective of our faith, and irrespective of our wealth, we are all at the bottom suffering together. The simple truth is, being female in South Sudan is dangerous. It means you facing threats of sexual violence. It means you being forced into marriage and not going to school. It also means that your chances of dying in childbirth are higher than almost anywhere else in the world. We are up against this traditional culture that has told us women and the men that women can do nothing at all because they have no power, that men have all the say. But look where that has got us. That is not okay. That is not fine at all. And we must change things. Last year, I took part in a groundbreaking Women's Silent Peace March that was organized by a coalition of South Sudanese women. We marched to demand an end to this war. We also marched because we wanted an end to all this violence because we were all tired. On the day of the march, I remember there was a group of men playing football where we were supposed to start from. Most of them ignored us, but one of them came and asked, "What are all these women gathering here for?" And we replied, "We are having a silent march for peace." And to my surprise, he immediately joined, and on his placard he wrote, "We are all women when it comes to ending war in South Sudan." Progress is still very slow. My country, South Sudan, is still on fire. And even though Juba is relatively safe, the other parts are still under attacks. And people are still dying. My message is to our leaders that people are dying and we are tired. And this discourages me. This makes me feel like giving up sometimes. And all the times I feel like giving up, I recall an incident when I just come back from the university. I was volunteering with this organization that helped internally displaced people as a civic education officer. Before a food distribution, I would talk to them to choose peace over war. I would tell them that we can love one another, we can forgive one another, and we can live alongside one another. I remember one of those days, an old woman who was about 80 years of age interrupted me and said, "My daughter, you are too young to talk to us about peace and peaceful coexistence. Those people have destroyed us. They have destroyed our farms. They have killed our children and husbands. And they are the reason as to why we are in this displaced camp." I was so discouraged and I felt so bad. But somehow, I listened to my inner voice and replied, "Habuba," meaning grandmother, "I hear all your concerns and I do feel your pain so deeply. But for how long will you all continue staying in this displaced camp waiting for help, homeless and hopeless? Just imagine if we all lived together in peace. We would have a country where our children would go to school and would even sleep in comfortable beds." She was moved and replied, "You are right, my daughter. We need to forgive and live with one another. May God bless you and may you continue to be our voice." So, as you can see, I'm not about to give up. Simply because of hope. That Habuba had it. The girls and the women I work with have it. That man at the march had it. And that man at the peace talks in Addis Ababa had it. And I believe today that all of you are getting that hope. Our message is to our leaders of South Sudan, to all South Sudanese, and to the rest of the world, that we want more women at the table. Not just negotiating peace, but also making decisions and developing our country. We want peace in South Sudan. We want a country where everyone can thrive. We are fighting without guns and through non-violence to heal our war-torn country. And I believe with all my heart that the work we are doing will not only break the cycle of war, but it will help us unlearn the decades of violence, and we will change the story of South Sudan. Thank you.